So I'm going to talk about Lynne Grabhorn, and how I found Lynne Grabhorn was a really strange experience, which is how I find everything. I'm usually given some sort of information and I either Google it or I walk out the door and I say something. The very first person I go, oh, I know all about that. And they tell it to you. So I was on a spiritual quest looking for guidance. And the guidance was always the same. Tell me how I could come forward and talk to the people about this. This is insane. This just is crazy. So anyway, I go off on one of my spiritual quests. I'm following advice in my head that I've gotten. I end up out in British Columbia for a solid month going, what am I doing here? And anyway, this woman says, I have a hypnotist friend, and let's call her and do a hypnosis and see what the hell's wrong, why you're so resistant, why you're so reluctant, why you don't want to do anything that you're told. And, you know, looking back at it, it's because I didn't want to be weird. I didn't want to be doing this. Surely to God, somebody else will do it. But it's not happening. The stuff that I bring forward is I haven't seen anywhere else. So, well, and I don't see much. My friends see it. So anyway, the woman comes and we do a hypnosis session. And when I come out of the hypnosis session, it's just surreal, the experience I had. But there was nothing about Lynne Grabhorn or books or anything in my session. So anyway, we're sitting there and she's asking me how I feel. And I started to tell her about the world pulling itself apart. And the world was like a giant cell, and it's time for this meiosis thing to happen. And as I'm talking to her, her mouth is hanging open. And I'm like, why are you looking at me like that? And she goes, you're talking about Lynne Grabhorn's work. And I don't know who Lynne Grabhorn is. And so anyway, the more I talk about it, I'm talking about frequency and I'm talking about being a grid worker. And it makes no sense because that's not what happened in the hypnosis. You think that's where my brain would have went. So I came to the decision that as interesting as my hypnosis was, I wasn't there for that. So she says to me, you are absolutely describing Lynne Grabhorn's second book. And she says, I'm going to get it for you. And she leaves the house and she goes and she brings the book back. And from the minute I opened the page, I couldn't put it down. You know, it's an out there concept about dark and light. It makes so much sense, but it's going to stretch a normal brain of our teaching world. It will stretch your brain. So I'm not saying, hey, go get this book and read this book or anything like that. If you're compelled to read it, you're called to read it, and you'll know why. At the end of the book, though, in the epilogue, and I'm going to get Celia to put this on the video here, is a call to the grid workers. And she actually calls us grid workers. And the minute I read it, I started to cry because it was a piece of a puzzle I'd been asking for a long, long time, to be recognized that I'm not crazy, that I am here to be the messenger of this information. And every one of us can connect. So there's nothing special about me except the fact that I agreed to be a messenger of this information. So I have to be connected. They go together. When you find your calling, you'll be easier to connect with this energy, or you connect with the energy and then your calling is easier to find. It's all symbiotic in how it works. So anyway, she brings me this book. I devour the book by Lynne Grabhorn. And at the end, she talks about the grid workers. And she's like, you know, there's 100 grid workers. And I'm like, well, surely somebody else is doing it. You know, somebody else is doing the things that I've been asked to do. But again, not that I've heard of. So in that book, she talks about something she calls the changing of the guards. Now, I read it and immediately knew what she was talking about. If you think about the soul as a vessel, so there's a human vessel that houses a soul. Well, if you think about a soul that's empty, and you're going to pour liquid into it. And let's say it's liquid, it's water and oil, and we're going to fill up the soul. And we've been here for billions of experiences. You know, being us right now is just a thread in the experience of this soul that we're talking about. So if you think of the soul being filled up with water and oil, and if you think about water being darkness, because it's heavier, and you think about oil as being lightness, well, that being has been influenced for billions of years. And if you choose to read the book and you get anything from it, it's the ebb and flow of the dark and light. It's how they move into each other all the time. We've given them names. Who knows if the names that we've given them are correct, or that if our concept of them is correct. There's a dark and there's a light. And they work together in this flowing ball. But the darkness has always been better at squishing over and taking more, right? So filling up faster, getting there faster. Well, in humans, the darkness is, you know, our negative, greed, fear. You know, it's easy to dip into these emotions, especially in the world we're living in. So over the course of billions of lifetimes that this soul being, the beingness of you has lived, it has adopted or taken into itself what was originally a pure soul being, darkness. So what we need to do is expel that energy. And again, it's not good or bad. It's just two sets of experiences. And darkness does humans no good. Fear, you know, fear and greed and loathing and shame and all these emotions, well, sure, feel them, but they don't do us any good. And we can't get our energy field up high enough to feel good. So it's like glue. It's gummy and it pulls you down. So that's the physical form as well as the energetic form. So what we want to do is get the water out and fill it completely with light, right? Fill it with oil. So Lynne Grabhorn is a contactee. Now, she doesn't call herself that in any of her work, but I'm a contactee. What's a contactee? It's somebody who has been contacted from outside the sphere of our knowing, our knowledge, our understanding. Now, more and more people are saying, yes, that this is possible. So that's what I am. I've been contacted from outside of that sphere, and I've been contacted on several levels. I've been contacted from the future, back, from my future self, back, looking for things. These are all part of Fire the Grid and things that I should have done a long time ago, but they'll come out in all these conversations. And so I get lost on the conversation because we're going back to Lynne Grabhorn. Lynne Grabhorn is a contactee. Now, she doesn't call herself that, but I've never been more sure of anything in my life, because as she wrote her words, her first book is called Excuse Me, God. No, wait, no. Sorry about that. Excuse Me, Your Life is Waiting. And that book became like a multi-million best-selling, blow you off the charts. But Lynne Grabhorn always said that the reason it was a success was so she could actually write the second book and get the second book out to the people like me, so that I can teach this to people who are kind of there and going, well, something's happening. So basically, she wrote the second book all about the fact to be able to say to you, how do we get the darkness out of the whole thing? We want it out of the cells. We want it out of the physical suit. We want it out of the energy being that's working with the suit. We want to change all of our primary objectives to 100% light. And that the focus and that our intention is that 100% light cannot lie or deceive. It can only guide to the highest light. And that's what we want for the grid, and that's what we want for each other. Because once we fully come from a place of operating at the highest light, there are none of the challenges of being human. We're not going to lie to each other. We're not going to steal and be jealous and all those things, because there's so much beauty in so many things. You're just going to see things differently. So Lynne Grabhorn offers from her guides through her book to me that if I am a teacher, which I am, if I am somebody telling the world about what's going on, then this is something you need to know. Whether you do it or not is completely up to you. Your heart will tell you if it's something that resonates for you. So Lynne Grabhorn said, you look at these sentences, these phrases, and you make a decision as you glance over them. Do I believe them? Does it feel logical? Does it feel right? Does it feel true that I'm asking for all my guidance to come from 100% light? So your primary guide, your collection of influencing guides like spirit guides or animal guides, any of those types of things, and the consciousness grid around you. You're asking that it be 100% light. That's it. So if you read these things and they resonate with you, you simply state them out loud. There's no getting on your knees. There's no wearing robes. There's no, dinging bells or anything. You don't have to join a cult. It's a by yourself, I am statement that I am working at being the best human I can be here. I want to be part of the change. I want to be part of the yes to a new future and a new time. I choose to be these things. And now here's another tool that if you feel that, and if you truly feel it in your heart, just read the statements out. That's it. Because it's your intention, and there's no reverence needed for that. The same as the arm at the hand of God, right? You don't have to do anything with the hand except not stick it in a carburetor, Take care of the hand, right? So anyway, so Lynne Grabhorn was called to write a multi-million-dollar people, of huge success. Oprah had her on. It was like a huge success book. Wow. And then she was called to action, and they wanted her to travel and speak and teach. And she was like, no. Who does that remind you of? Right here. So she retreated. She didn't want the fame. She didn't want all this. It was driving her crazy. And then her communication that was coming to her regularly was, that's not even the important book. This is the book we want you to write. And so she wrote it, and the whole time, if you read it, she's very tongue-in-cheek, witty, going, I know this is crazy. I know this is crazy. And I sit here going, I know this is crazy. But it's not. Fire the Grid happened with no budget, no social media. Annie and Brad and me, just three of us doing stuff. And me going, no, I don't want to do it. So, and here we are now, Fire the Grid, like pulse, let's do this, quick. And I'm like, oh, you know what? They've thrown me into it so fast, there's no time to be afraid. So, anyway, back to Lynne Grabhorn. Celia's going to post these things and with the video or however it works. And if you feel that these statements are true for you, there's nothing to do except speak them out loud. And then to continuously turn towards the next right move, the next right thing. Open yourself to the guidance that you have obviously opened yourself to, and allow it to flow through you. Now, with respect to the Fire the Grid project, just knowing about the project makes you awake. Do you see what I'm saying? You can't talk about something if your consciousness is not there. So right away, you've already contributed to that truth, right? Because people who do talk about this project as, what have we got to lose? These are otherworldly light beings that have come to help us. Well, many of us believe something's coming to help us. So this is part of it. They've also said they're coming. They're coming. I think we're definitely going to have something happen. But those are the things, again, that you're going to disintegrate in those conversations. They are here right now because they're sending this information through me to you. And imagine setting this up way back when Lynne Grabhorn wrote her book. Like, do you see the intricacy of the weaving? The Romans talked about it, the Greeks talked about it, the fates, the webs. This is constantly going on around us. We're getting set up for something down here that happened 40 years ago. And then you watch the thread come down and it connects you. Boom. So Lynne Grabhorn did what she was told. And she didn't do it without some kicking and screaming. And I think I'm a lot like her that way. But this particular little aspect is important. You know, Fire the Grid is fast approaching. If this resonates with you, and your heart has to feel it. And there's no timeline on it. You've just discovered it. You know, you can sit with this for months. One day, if you feel inspired to open yourself to 100% light, I suspect that will be pretty amazing, because it has been for me. But as soon as I forget who I am spiritually, then I go back to poor me, you know, poor me, poor me. And I live in the most abundant country in the world, and I have the most abundance available, and I still poor me. So even after this, you know, it's learning to walk in the light, learning to be a human being that is aware that what you say and how you act and what you do influences and affects other people around you. And on the huge or grander scale, you're either contributing to the grid of light or you're drawing from the grid of light. And who do you choose to be right now? You know, I've never had a sense of urgency from these beings, but now is very, they're saying a lot of now. So it's now. You know, the 2021 is in full bloom. July 19th is just a few weeks away. And any of us that can contribute with even the single thought, 11:11 GMT, even the single thought of, I love my armchair. I love my armchair. You know, if you could say, I love my armchair, and then say, thank you, thank you, thank you, you have contributed. Thank you very much.